Yeah, this is a biological perspective. Literally the perspective from the biological nature of consciousness. Again, something which, if we are to take certain approaches, are being entirely overlooked, disregarded. But this very process of identifying with the temporal and that contracted state and all that which comes with that, in all this what is known as vasanas, right? The psychic and psychological conditioning could be viewed from a biological perspective. It's the gut-brain reaction. A lot of people experience that expansiveness, that love, that kind of in meditation, when they are alone, when that, that. But somehow it's hard to carry that throughout the day, 24/7. It's kind of like, as soon as we are confronted with any situations in life, it's like we're bound to kind of like, it's as if some kind of mechanism triggers and throws us back.
It's like a tsunami. You see them, the things float in the ocean and all something here. Really.
Yes. Yeah. Very apt metaphor. So let's look at it from two perspectives. Let's give it a view. From, let's say, dissecting that process, obviously what is taking place is that something that is wired within the cortexes, right, issues qualitative hormones, juices down, that then obviously prompt us to experience a certain state, whether that state is fear, anger, contraction of any source. And it actually felt because it releases chemicals in the body. And when the chemicals are being released, we know that it changes the biorhythm of the body. Our body vibrates on a different level. Your mind can clearly understand that that's not what it is. Yet the body, you cannot help it. It has dynamics of its own, right? So, in terms of how that process works, and this might look a little bit disheartening, but the second part will be more optimistic. The full, let's say, uprooting or rewiring can only take place when there is a profound dissociation, unplugging, I call it, when that which is wired has to be unwired. And that unwiring takes place either in prolonged samadhis or when, let's say, if you have experienced that awakening, that preliminary awakening, that expansion, Kundalini, when from there on is becoming prana Shakti, takes care of that process spontaneously, naturally. Because what it does, it opens all this and reactivates all the dormant areas in the brain. And there is this passage, a distance between the reptilian brain and the divine brain, sometimes it's called. Very short distance. However, when the crucial glands in the body are awakened, they start to issue qualitatively new hormones into the system. With time, it doesn't happen overnight, the physiology gradually undergoes that process. And these qualitatively new hormones, literally, they create new chemical, let's say, responses in the body. And that process is actually not just on a chemical level, because it's also to do with vibration, this whole thing, because it's like, what is this process is? It's our field is being more charged. And this whole biorhythmical field vibrating with much higher frequency. And as it vibrates with much higher frequency, even the DNA subtly undergoes changes. Once the DNA undergoes changes, it sends signals, new qualitative signals. It restores the lost patterns. And where the production of RNA, where the protein is being formed, we start to literally rebuild this body. Rebuild this body first on a subtle level, on the level of the subtle anatomy, but then even down to the cellular level. And funny enough, I'm going to bring Ramana Maharshi here third time. Ramana Maharshi said that even for the one who is, let's say, experienced and attained self-realization, minimum 3 years takes for that process to seep into the body, but traditionally up to 12 years. Minimum 3 years, so that the body can fully embody this newly expanded consciousness. So that is, let's say, a classical view, or this is, let's say, how it works. Because as you've realized yourself, you cannot really do anything about that process. Nothing really you can do, right? Yet that consciousness, that awakened consciousness within you, does that process spontaneously. But you just need to give certain conditions to allow that process. And I said that earlier. Prolonged times in samadhi are necessary, because this is where the most changes take place on the brain of the cortexes. This science is still very much, there are a lot of studies made in that. One thing is to meditate from time to time, or even regularly, but in short intervals. And another is to go into that process of meditation, where you allow prolonged exposure of this physiology to the state of samadhi, or how you want to, let's say.
Yes, that's precisely actually what I saw is in extended meditation retreats, really extended ones, a month or more, the body's actually shaking and it feels like a rewiring energetically.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that day-to-day life that just doesn't happen, whether I sit or whatever I do. It doesn't seem that rewiring, it doesn't seem to happen.
Even when you take part in these long retreats, prolonged.
The long retreats then does rewire, I see. So what you're saying fits with my experience. The thing is, it's kind of weird to sit in a long retreat anymore. Like, it doesn't seem like a point. I just sit there and I'm pretty happy. And nothing.
Yes.
Not all the time. Obviously the mind goes off, but I ignore all the instructions and just it's happy, it buzzes, whatever, it does its thing. There's no one to work on. But if I'm not in that situation for a long period of time, it just doesn't seem to rewire. But it's nice to hear you say that there is a rewiring going on. That does seem to be my experience.
And now, the second perspective, okay? And the second perspective, something that you can implement already now, at any time. This perspective comes from this very tradition, which is linked to this building. The Kashmir Shaivism does not undermine or does not view any emotion or any feeling, even if it is, let's say, in plain language known as negative, as something to kind of like shun away or disregard. In fact, one of the benefits of Tantra is that Tantra works with absolutely everything. You need to make that radical leap, radical understanding, that it does not deny anything. It embraces absolutely everything. Just to give you a slight perspective, when you set heart chakra, you know that heart chakra is not just as simple. It also has layers. Behind the heart chakra, there is a subtler realm. And all the emotions, all the range of emotions, positive, negative, all the moods, all the states of mind, are embodied by each particular frequency of each particular petal, if we speak symbolically. Like a clock, it's where the hand falls onto. You see? That experience is being entertained and perceived in the body. For that reason, tantric practitioner does not fight against any, because we're conditioned to think that, okay, I ought to be angelic, or I ought to be good. Goody goody gumdrops, I have to feel that way, On the contrary, you embrace that. Who said that there is no love in anger or no love in fear? It sounds contradictory.
I see it here in
Yeah.
this love of self.
Yeah. But you don't even need to fall into that, because I don't know, that everything is based on notions and assumptions. So sometimes this assumption that I ought to feel that way, because I'm a spiritual practitioner, I've sat, I've experienced this peace, I know that I'm that peace, I know I'm that light, I want to carry it throughout the daily activity. No. That's why Kashmir Shaivism is a householder's religion, it's often called. And every Kashmir Shaiva master was a married man. They were not renunciates. In fact, you cannot renunciation is impossible in Kashmir Shaivism, speaking properly. It's an oxymoron, because you cannot renounce the world. You cannot renounce Shakti. In Advaitic, in the kind of like classical Hindu, you can. And it generated and created the whole culture of renunciation. Like, go to Kumbh Mela and see how many naked sadhus there are, renunciates and everything. It's not criticizing, it's a beautiful tradition, but some of it is kind of becoming a bit anachronistic, Lots of these guys just simply smoking pot there and imagining being Shiva, The true Shiva doesn't need pot. He's always there, So my advice to you is, next time you experience that contraction, fall into it right away. Willingly embrace it. That is the spanda. Everything, every slight vibe, no matter what that vibe is a legitimate experience and ought to be embraced. And you'll see the qualitative difference.